I have a guest today that I'm so excited to bring you because he just has such a wealth of knowledge about not just immigration and border issues, but law and order issues as well. He has done it all. He's been a deputy. He's been a city cop. He's been a federal agent, and now you probably see him on the news even more than you see me. Mark Morgan, welcome to the show.
Betsy, thanks for having me. Actually, I'm one of your biggest fans, so I really appreciate being here.
Thanks so much, Mark. So I'm going to ask you the question that we all get asked. Why'd you become a cop?
I think the same reason we all did. I know it's a little corny and sappy, but I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to be a part of something greater than myself and actually give back, and that's what's motivated me. I had really good role models. My uncle was in the Marine Corps. My dad joined the Army. So public service have really always been a part of my life. And if I had to do it all over again, Betsy, I'm sure you're the same way. I wouldn't have changed a thing.
And you really worked your way up to CBP,
Yep.
and you were the acting director at a time when let's just say you were a really busy guy. Talk about that.
Yeah, it was. And look, and I think what's important here is just like you, I had a long career, 40 years. I've served under 6 administrations, both Republican and Democrat. So my stance today, it's not about politics. It's not about left or right, red or blue. This is about red, white, and blue, facts and reality. And I was acting commissioner of CBP under President Trump. And look, it just happened. President Trump, I believe he was on the right side of this issue. He was on the right side of the rule of law, all law and order, and protecting the sovereignty of our nation. And because of that, Betsy, he gave us a network of tools, authorities, and policies that we needed that actually allowed us to do our job to safeguard and defend and protect our borders. And I think during that presidency, we had actually achieved the most secure border in our lifetime. And I think that's why it's so frustrating for me to see the chaos and lawlessness that's happening right now.
Why is border security so important to the sovereignty of a nation?
Yeah, I bet you that's the question. And I tell you, and I travel from San Diego to Brownsville to Maine, and there's a lot of misunderstanding about the border, even among conservatives, right? I mean, when I ask people, this is what I'll do sometimes. I'll say, hey, look, drugs are bad. We should stop drugs from coming in. Yeah, of course, Mark. And criminals, murderers, rapists, pedophiles, of course. National security threats, of course. But then when I say, well, what about that young mother with 2 kids? That's where I start, well, Mark, they're just looking for a better life, and as if there's no downside to illegal immigration. And that's one of the false narratives that are out there. They've erased the word illegal from illegal immigration, and they made it to the American people, trying to convince them to hijack their compassion like there's no downside. But there is. And I know you know this, but here, real quick, here's what happens. Illegal alien comes, including that mother with 2 kids. It pulls Border Patrol resources off the front line, away from their law enforcement and national security mission. So while they're relegated to administrative duties to process and release that mother and 2 kids, what happens? The cartels are gaining operational control of those areas, and they're exploiting that to push drugs, criminals, and national security threats. So illegal immigration is not a victimless crime. It's connected to our inability to effectively secure our borders. That's why it matters.
Mark, why doesn't the Border Patrol just turn these people around and send them back to where back to the next country, which would be Canada to the north, Mexico to the south? Why don't we just do that?
Yeah, look, this is why I love coming on with you. And this is why I love being on with you, Newsmax, because at the end of the day, what that question represents is what I say a long time. You don't have to be a border security expert to figure out what we need to do. You just have to have common sense, right? So if someone is illegally injured in violation of the rule of law, in violation of our sovereignty, that's what should happen. We should simply detain them and remove them. That's what we should do. That's what we were doing under President Trump. Again, this isn't about politics. This is just fact. We ended catch and release. And when you stop releasing people that have illegally entered the country, and wait for it, here's the shocker, they stop coming, right? I mean, it's common sense. And so that's why it's so frustrating. On day one, what this president did, along with 94 executive orders to destroy all the network of tools and authorities and policies we had in place, one of the big things he did is he reinstated catch and release. Right now, Secretary Mayorkas recently testified under oath in Congress. They're releasing 85% of those that are illegally entering our country. And then we're shocked why they keep coming. It's that simple. It's just common sense.
Well, and I live in the Tucson sector here, 80 miles from the border, and we see what is happening because, and I don't think a lot of people understand that. We see the tent cities, we see the big lines at the airport and at the bus stops and this and that, and we really have no idea who most of these people are, do we?
That's Betsy. Another great question. There's a false narrative out there, and a lot of this being driven by the White House, by Secretary Mayorkas. Look, we can have a disagreement about policies, and make no mistake, I disagree with our policies. But what we can allow from politicians is to lie and to intentionally mislead, and that's what we're doing with respect to vetting. It goes something like this, right? How many times have we heard from Secretary Mayorkas to the White House, oh, that we vet people when they come in? That's a crock. It's a lie. Let me give you just a couple of common sense examples. So somebody, single adult male from Cuba, do you really think that we're working with the Cuban government and that they're giving us information on these individuals' criminal background from that country? Of course not. What about Lebanon? When we get a single adult male of military age from Lebanon, do you think the Lebanese government is being honest with us, whether that individual is a member of Hezbollah or not? Of course not. And so what happens is, and so there's a lot of countries that these individuals are coming from that we have no diplomatic relations with. So we're getting zero about their background from the country they came from. But even those countries that we do, like let's say Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, their database systems are so archaic. So even the countries that are wanting to cooperate with us, we're not getting the full picture of these individuals. Yet every single day, we're still releasing them, just like the alleged killer of Lincoln Riley.
And that is such a horrific case that we have been hearing about for weeks and weeks now. Nursing student Laken Riley was murdered by a man, and brutally murdered by a man who absolutely should not have been here. Why, when someone who is here illegally commits a crime, Mark, why are they not immediately deported?
Betsy, I'd like to know that answer too, right? It defies logic. It defies common sense. But what it does do is illustrate this administration's policy of America last and everybody else from 180 different countries first. Our administration and sanctuary cities failed Lincoln Riley on multiple occasions. First, this individual illegally entered from Venezuela with his wife and kid. And then they were unlawfully paroled in the United States rather than being detained. And from there, then he goes to New York, where again he commits a crime. He's charged with endangerment of a child. But New York, NYPD, they released him not because they wanted to, but because they have to, because they're a sanctuary city, and the mandate there is that NYPD cannot cooperate with another federal law enforcement agency. So he was released before ICE could put a detainer. But it gets even worse, because even if ICE would have been able to get a detainer, NYPD wouldn't have honored it because they're forced not to, and he would have been released. Where then he goes to Georgia, he goes to be with his brother that's also in the country illegally, and then allegedly he has savagely killed Lincoln Riley. And it's something, here's what's so frustrating. This was preventable. I'm not saying we can prevent all crime, but here's one demographic of crime, Betsy, that we can prevent. Crime committed by people that should have never been in the country.
We often hear when we're talking about guns and things like that, if we could change this policy and it would save just one life, isn't it worth it? But that doesn't seem to apply when we're talking about illegal aliens.
Yeah, Betsy, I tell you what, I think it was a week or so ago, right after the murder happened, that there was a politician from California that was actually talking exactly what you're mentioning, how she was saying about how, as tragic of this one life lost is, we've got to be careful and not lower emotion get in front of us and change policies based on this one murder. Betsy, I literally was screaming at the TV. I literally lost my mind, right? I said, can you imagine if you were the parents of Lincoln Riley listening to that? No. One, when it's this type of heinous activity, just one one death like this, yes, it should change our policy. But here's the thing, and you and I talking earlier, is that here's the tragedy of overall, she's not the first and she's not going to be the last, right? I mean, Kayla Hamilton, Elizabeth Medina, there was Tibbetts, Molly Tibbetts, and the list goes, Kate Steinle, the list goes on and on and on. She's not the first, she's not the last. Look, I'll give you a couple quick stats too. So in 2023, ICE arrested 73,000 illegal aliens in the country, 73,000 in 1 year, including murderers, rapists, pedophiles, and gang members. And in the last 36 months, CBP has encountered over 75,000 criminals at the border, including murderers, rapists, and gang members. And during that same time period, we've had 1.9 million known gotaways. So my question to people that don't want to secure our borders, how many murderers, pedophiles, rapists, aggravated felons, and gang members are you okay with being in the United States?
And this is at a time when domestically, we already have a huge crime issue and short-staffed police departments all around this country. And we're having a hard time recruiting, a hard time retaining. How difficult is recruiting for the CBP right now?
It's brutal. It's across the land. I mean, let me give you an example. So there's a 26-year Border Patrol veteran, good dude, right? And he's getting ready, getting his uniform ready like we all used to, right? And he's looking in the mirror and he's getting all squared away like he always has for 2.5 decades. And he said he looked up in the mirror and he had this rush come over him that he realized after 2.5 decades, he had now been forced to participate in the world's largest human smuggling and trafficking operation, right? I did the same thing. It gives you chills to hear that, right? It does. And so that summarizes and captures how they feel. And so, yeah, they're leaving. They're leaving as fast as they can. An organization where you used to have to force them out, right? Because it's such a great job. They're leaving, and now they're having trouble recruiting them. Their retention is, and their ability to hire is not keeping up with those that are leaving, and so they're actually losing numbers.
And Mark, we talk about illegals coming here and preying on our citizens. Illegal migrants also are crime victims, aren't they?
Oh, Betsy, I tell you, I'm so glad you brought this up. This is one of the biggest lies that are out there, that this country every single day is being lied to. Look, in law school a long time ago, I learned that the intentional omission of a material fact is the same thing as a lie. Right. And that's what this current administration is doing. The worst thing that we can do for the migrants themselves is to have open borders. In the past 36 months, CBP alone has recovered over 2,000 dead migrants at our borders. And that doesn't include the migrants recovered by local law enforcement. It doesn't include the migrants that died in Mexico or the Darien Gap on their journey up here. And we also know that up to 30% of young women and children are assaulted and raped on the journey up here, not to mention the countless migrants that after they're smuggled in, they're thrust into the life of trafficking after they've already made it into the United States. And so again, back to your earlier question, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to do the math. If you increase the flow of illegal migration by 1,000%, you've just increased by 1,000% the number of dead migrants, the number of raped migrants, and the number of migrants being thrust into trafficking. So this is an absolute travesty for the migrants themselves as well as our own country.
And, we can't seem to get people excited about saving at least women and children when it comes to this. I see them at the airport and on the airplanes, these young moms with young girls. They have dead eyes. You know what has happened to them on the way here. And then you wonder what's going to happen to them when they get wherever they're going. They can't pay their cartel fee and they're trapped. And it's just, it's extraordinary that the American government is doing this to women and children, especially.
Betsy, I couldn't have said it better myself. I just don't get why this country is not behind stopping what's going on at our border for that very reason alone. I still remember when I was chief of the Border Patrol, one of my first visits down there, I saw a young 9-year-old boy that was standing next to his 7-year-old sister, grasping her hand tightly as her eyes were as big as saucer. Tears were welling up in her eyes. They were both scared, lost, and afraid. And I thought to myself, how in the hell can we as a country allow and facilitate that to happen? We should be united to stop that from happening rather than just get better at reacting to it after it's already happened. on the traffic side, we know what's happened. I mean, look, this administration's own HHS has admitted that they've lost track of 85 to 100,000 of the 430,000 unaccompanied minors that they've incentivized to come to this country. But we do know where a lot of them end up, like the 12-year-old that was working in a meatpacking plant at midnight cleaning up entrails, right? I mean, this is just unbelievable, Betsy, and I just don't get it. But people, look, they've allowed their ideology and their politics and their compassion to be hijacked, and they're just oblivious to the truth and reality.
Mark, we're also seeing people from what, 80, 100 different countries, a lot of military-aged men from, and again, from countries that, we used to be Mexico, Central, South America. Now they are from everywhere. They're all not walking to Mexico. How is it that we're getting here? And also, they are getting here. And also, what about the Canadian border?
Yeah, so both great questions again that I think a lot of people just do not understand. I think, look, I get it. People are working hard. Some people working 2 jobs, trying to put food on the table, take care of their family. I get it. But there's still this misnomer, this misunderstanding that it's just Mexicans coming across looking for work. That's just not true. And actually, the number is we've, in the past 36 months, they've encountered people from 180 different countries. There's only 195 recognized countries on the face of the planet, just to tell you how it's exploded, how the message of this administration's open border policies has acted like a beacon for the entire world to come into this country. It's unsustainable. And again, it goes back to the vetting process as well. We're not able to vet these people coming in. So people a lot of times will talk about, well, look at what, 9.1 million. That's how many we've apprehended total nationwide encounters in the past 36 months. 9.1 million. You add in the 9.1 million. You add in the 1.9 million gotaways, right? So we're at 11 million. That's equivalent to like the 8th largest populated state in this country in the past 36 months. I mean, you just can't make this up. And we're not vetting all these people, but yet I hear all the time, Betsy, well, look, as a sign of success, look how many we've apprehended. That's a joke because, again, we're releasing them knowing nothing about them. There's an old saying in the Border Patrol, as they're processing the individuals, before they ask their name, they'll say, hey, wait, before we give your name, make sure you like it because that's going to be your name associated with you as long as you're in the United States. That's where we're at.
Wow. Can the president stop this, Mark, today?
Yeah, immediately. And think about this. I'll go back to common sense again, right? Because that's really what the border security is about. So President Biden, in his first 100 days, he issued 94 executive orders. 94 without Congress. That's what an executive order is. 94 executive orders that dismantled and destroyed the network of tools and authorities and policies we had in place under President Trump that led to the most secure border. I'll give you a couple examples. The safe third country agreements with all 3 Northern Triangle countries, gone. The Remain in Mexico program, gone. Building the wall, gone. They placed enormous restrictions on ICE that basically said being here in the country illegally is not enough to remove you. I can keep going on. Those are the highlights. He could take that same pen that he used to destroy those policies and reenact those policies. With his pens, he could reinstate the Remain in Mexico. He could reinstate the asylum cooperative agreements. He could start building the wall again, and he could remove the restrictions on ICE so they could actually do their job to remove people like the scumbag that allegedly killed Laken Riley. He could do that without Congress acting.
So you have become involved in an organization that is trying to inform and deal with all of this. You've got a bunch of other extraordinary experts with you. Talk about Border 911.
Thanks, Betsy. Look, it's a grassroots effort started by another great patriot, Tom Holman. As you said, he brought in some of the best border security minds. Sarah Card is on there. She's on Fox all the time. She's been covering the border for years. Jason Jones, he's a former captain with Texas DPS. Derek Maltz, who was a chief in the DEA. Rodney Scott, the former chief of the Border Patrol, and myself. And we've come together to really do what we're doing right now, is bring awareness and attention to this issue, to educate the American people about the chaos and lawlessness at our borders, why it matters, and why it needs to stop.
How concerned are you guys at Border 911 about another 9/11/01?
Very concerned, and here's why. Here's a couple of facts. This isn't just Mark Morgan's opinion. In the past 36 months, we've encountered more illegal aliens on the FBI's watch list than any other time in history combined. In the same time period, we've apprehended tens of thousands of what we call special interest aliens that we know come from countries that sponsor, harbor, and facilitate terrorism. Then I'll go back to the same time period, 1.9 million known gotaways. Betsy, the question isn't if or when the threat comes here. The issue is it's already here.
Yeah, and that I don't think people really realize we are really in a 9-10 mindset rather than a 9-12 mindset. And I think it's going to come back, and I hope I'm wrong, to harm this nation. Mark, at some point, and we just have a minute left,
Yep.
Are we going to have to do mass deportations to get back control of our borders?
Yes, two things, but what we got to, well, let's not put the cart before the horse. The first thing we have to do is stop the bleeding at the border, right? So we have to shut down the physical border. We have to stop the influx of continued illegal immigration. We get that. Then we need to start working here. And I get asked that all the time. Can we deport millions? Yes. And how do we do it? One at a time. I'm a little facetious there, but look, we can do it. You've been in law enforcement. We can do large-scale operations. And I guarantee you, once we start that, you'll see a lot of the people that are here illegally self-deport. We've seen it before in history. We can get it done.
Absolutely. Mark, where can people find out more about you? Where can they follow you? Where can they find out more about Border 911?
Border911.com. In fact, just a couple of days from now, we're gonna have an event in Mar-a-Lago on April 4th. I really encourage people. It's not too late. You can still probably get a ticket. I don't know. They may be all gone by now. But if not, still go on Border 911. There's some educational stuff in there. If you can, throw a couple of dollars to help facilitate us to get out across the country to really educate the American people on what's going on.
Mark, I cannot thank you enough for spending time with us today. And if you would like more information about the National Police Association, visit us at nationalpolice.org.
Ma'am, put the gun down! Put the gun down!
Last year, law enforcement officers were involved in hundreds of thousands of use of force incidents. A use of force incident is when an officer must use nonverbal tactics to gain control of a dangerous situation.
Put the knife on the ground.
In many cases, officers have no choice but to use force when a suspect doesn't comply with a lawful order.
Use of force is always ugly. No one likes it, especially police officers.
Together, we can help de-escalate these dangerous encounters. Help police officers by complying with their lawful orders. Don't attack, attempt to disarm, or flee from an officer.
Use of force is an officer's last option. Most incidents can be avoided by not resisting arrest.
If you feel you've been wrongfully detained by a police officer, then seek a legal solution after the encounter has been resolved.
Let's keep everyone safe. Comply now and complain later.